Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the morning devotional. It is Friday and nearly the weekend, as we've been discussing beforehand. Today's passage is from Mark, and I've made a mistake and I forgot to put the actual references up, so I'm just going to crack on and read it. I'm sorry about that. Then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law. He would be killed, but 3 days later he would rise again from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. "Get away from me, Satan," he said. "You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." Then, calling a crowd to join his disciples, he said, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anyone worth more than your soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and of my message in these adulterous and sinful days, the Son of Man will be ashamed of that person when he returns in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." Jesus went on to say, "I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the kingdom of God arrive in great power." Okay, so I'm going to start with two very different scenarios. Okay, scenario number one, let's consider the high jump in the Summer Olympics. The victory goes to the jumper who clears the greatest height. That's fairly obvious. However, if there isn't a clear winner, they have what's called tiebreakers. And these are used to score the eventual winner. If two or more jumpers tie for one of those places, the tiebreakers are: number one, the fewest misses at the height at which the tie occurred, and number two, the fewest misses throughout the competition. So, in a tiebreaker, in the high jump, it is possible to win the gold medal by actually failing in the competition. Okay? One of the few sports where you can get a gold medal for actually failing during the competition when a certain situation arises. Scenario number two. I remember seeing a rather emaciated man giving a presentation. This would be the last presentation he ever gave. He was worth over $7 billion, personal fortune. And yet, despite this, he was dying of cancer. Now, this man is said to have changed the world. In fact, several of you are using equipment that inspired him. His name, and Mark knows this, is Steve Jobs, the visionary leader of Apple, who brought us the iPhone and the iPad, and you may well be using those today. Jesus said, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. Just like the tiebreak in the high jump, we will all eventually fail and perish. Doesn't matter how many times we've been prayed for healing or been healed in the past, ultimately our earthly bodies will eventually fail. And in the case of Steve Jobs, all those riches could not in the end save him. Even though he had tried many alternative treatments, sometimes against doctors' advice, In the end, he was beaten by his own body, and he was beaten by the cancer. We are born naked, and we will die naked, so they say. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? So these are sobering thoughts here. It doesn't matter how much riches this world might bestow upon us, how secure we may feel in the world that we're living in. In the end, there will be a judgment day. And we have a chance now to invest properly, invest in the kingdom. Given the sad end that we will all encounter, what are we to gain? Well, surprising to you all viewing this, I am 65 years old on Sunday, okay? Thank you, Mark, for that. So I am a good bit closer to that day, possibly closer than all of you viewing this, maybe. Who knows? So even more important for me to check my priorities at this stage in my life and take up my cross and follow him. Where are we investing during our short life? And it is short. I mean, I feel like I've reached 65 in the blink of an eye. I remember being 21 in 1976, and on that actual day, buying, excuse me a moment, this Good News Bible here, which I bought on my 21st birthday. A bit tattered, but it's still here with me. And later that same year, the New International Version was, of course, published. And what about being ashamed of the gospel? Well, here is my biggest worry. I find sharing my faith very difficult. I'm not really a people person, as I've said in these talks before. So I try and demonstrate God's love in different ways by my actions rather than my words. I'm involved with CDA, I think some of you know, Community Debt Advice. And I'm looking after my elderly neighbour. I quite often do Sunday dinners for him. I await my judgment day to discover whether these things are sufficient. Finally, we end where we began. Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." You are seeing things from a human point of view and not God's. And here, I guess, is the crux of the whole thing. It is God's path, God's perspective, and God's will that matters above everything else. So please don't get distracted by these world's attractions, and instead focus before it's too late.